Before I get into my discussion as to why I think Bloodline is a perfect DLC, I'll quickly state that no, I don't think it's one of the best game DLCs ever made, because it really isn't in any regard, but to me it's perfect due to how it outclasses the actual game in every conceivable way. Getting into it, the story of Watch Dogs Legion Bloodline is far greater than the mess of the main story present in Watch Dogs Legion. I think the DLC itself is a great example of how they could have continued to move the franchise forward instead of focusing the entire game around a gimmick feature, which resulted in the lack of a main character in the main game. And really the biggest problem with the story of the main game was the fact that it had no main character. In Bloodline, however, you instead get two playable protagonists only, in Aiden Pierce of course, and the fan favorite Wrench. Both have pretty good stories within the main story of the DLC, and it was really engaging to see the continuous development of Aiden Pierce as he has become much older yet still struggles to live with his past, and the guilt he has from the first game carries over here as well. There's actually a sequence in this game where Aiden pretty much has to face the demons of his past in entering the home of his sister and where his niece used to live before the tragedy of the first game occurred. This particular sequence in the game really reminded me of a similar sequence in the first Max Payne game, with all of the eeriness and off vibe that the particular mission gave off. In addition to Aiden, Wrench is such a fantastic character here as well, and he gets a lot more time to shine in this DLC than he even had in Watch Dogs 2 itself. Wrench's character arc in this DLC was easily my favorite part of the entire DLC, as the game is really great at balancing the more annoying and clumsy traits of Wrench with some actual emotional moments throughout that was so much better than any of the characters we had in Watch Dogs Legion's main story. The game gives both characters a bunch of missions that build into their own separate storylines but then converge into a satisfying end, which I was honestly really happy with. I think the writers of the DLC really found a great balance in the story's tones and the characters themselves in teaming up the even grumpier Aiden Pierce, who's actually quite old now, with Wrench, who continues to be a fun and never serious rebel, although as mentioned before he does have some emotional conversations throughout this game. I really did enjoy how their stories converged, as first Aiden was chasing down Wrench to then Wrench making sure that Aiden was safe. The entirety of the interactions with these characters was super well done and resulted in a well-paced narrative that again showed that this franchise still can do something great. Something else I found great was the fact that the DLC didn't just give you the exact same map as the main game, yet it made you play within a much more contained and smaller section of London, which again I honestly think only added to the story of the DLC and made the quests much more streamlined rather than you needing to drive thousands of meters just to get to your next objective. Throughout your venture into the main quest, you also need to do the little side quests for both characters, which just ensures that you experience all that this DLC has to offer, and once again is great for developing these characters further with interactions with not only each other but just other random individuals spread out across the world. I think now it's time to discuss the gameplay component of the DLC, which is really just as good as the story within the DLC. The many characters or NPCs you could recruit in the main game led to a blending in of all of their abilities, and many of these abilities were duplicated across these NPCs, which actually led to a decrease in variety within the gameplay, despite the fact that more characters should mean more variety. Bloodline actually has that variety in its gameplay, and in a much greater abundance than even the main game, and this is due to the very unique abilities provided to both Aiden and Wrench. Just like the actual personalities of both of these characters, their respective arsenals within the gameplay could not be more reflective of their own personalities and how different they are from one another. The different traits and gear that both Wrench and Aiden have leads to a gameplay loop that I really enjoyed, and I had a lot more fun with the DLC's gameplay than I ever did with the main game. Firstly, Aiden has many of the unique abilities he had in the first game, and many of his traits here in the gameplay is a homage to what he had in the first game. Both Aiden and Wrench are very combat centric in terms of their arsenals, although I'd argue that Aiden also has great traits to pull off stealth in the DLC as well. Aiden wields a powerful revolver from the first game and of course his baton, but easily the coolest part of his gameplay is his unique ability of system crash, in which he's pretty much able to hack everything in his immediate area and shut them all down or make them go absolutely crazy. This again harkens back to the first game when he shut down all of Chicago, and here the ability is so fun to use. The tool is great for all types of scenarios, but especially when you're in a tight area and can't find a way out. Shutting down everything in the immediate vicinity is a great distraction that allows you to easily slip out before the enemies are able to get you. Aiden also does have a couple of passive skills, such as one of the coolest abilities you'll see in this entire game, which is him being able to slow down time after an enemy takedown, and if you time your reload right, he's able to increase the damage of the weapon by a dramatic amount for a limited period of time. In the aspect of gameplay, Wrench is just as unique and fun to play as Aiden, and I honestly enjoyed both of their gameplay systems to a great degree. Wrench's arsenal is just as unique as Aiden, as his primary weapon kit consists of a massive hammer called Lady Smash and an SMG that is able to actually randomly hack targets in the vicinity when it's charged up. Wrench's arsenal also included a unique flashbang grenade that is a great tool to be able to quickly disengage from combat and get to a safer area before enemies are able to get you. One of the coolest abilities he has though is his ability to call his customized drone fitted out with all of his graffiti skills, which is a great way to traverse the buildings and landscapes of the open world environment within the DLC. The upgrade system for both of the characters was also pretty great and is shared between the both of them and is even simpler than the upgrade system of the main game. By doing these specific side missions, as I mentioned earlier, for various characters across the open world, both Wrench and Aiden will be able to unlock various new skills, with many of these being the abilities that some of the recruitable NPCs had in the main game. Another great thing about the DLC is that the difficulty is higher than the main game, which basically was a breeze to play through, and that's because many of the locations you ventured into in the main game will contain the same number of enemies and challenge here, and initially when you don't have any upgrades and unique tools for Aiden and for Wrench, it can be hard to tackle these outposts and various bases, especially in the early part of the DLC. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with the DLC of Watch Dogs Legion much more than the actual game itself, and although it's nowhere near a perfect game in itself, it's a perfect DLC in how it outclasses the main game in every component and really builds on the mechanics that were half decent in Legion, resulting in a well-paced and extremely fun experience with well-written and interesting characters. Anyway, that's all from me for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.